more. So what we have is a habitual patterns, the way that we hold our body, the way we sit, the way we walk, and we get used to being in certain patterns. So often what we need to do is move our body more and it'll just change the way you feel. I mean, if you just move your facial muscles just a little bit, okay, just have a standard look on your face, just a small smile. Just a small, not too big, just a small smile, okay? So then just move, then that's just increase that smile just a little bit. Just a normal smile and then increase a little bit. Just a little bit of a facial impression, just a bit bigger smile, you notice it changes the way you feel dramatically. Now a big smile on your face. So just by moving your physio, even just a little bit with your facial expression, it instantly changes the way that you feel. Do you notice that? So to be depressed, you'd have to hold your body a certain way. You know that if you have a big smile on your face, you can't be depressed, okay? So generally, depression is not something that happens to you, it's something that we do. We get in a habitual pattern, okay? A habitual pattern of holding our body a certain way is a big part of that. Now, there's other key factors that determine the way that we feel. So jot this down. Number 2 is what will also determine how we feel is what we what? Is what we focus on. So do you focus on the bugs on the windscreen, or do you focus on the destination ahead? They both exist, don't they? They both exist, but do we focus on where we're going, or do we focus on all the little bugs or little problems in front of us? That's just a choice, okay? So what we focus on has a big... So what we focus on has a big determinant in the way that we feel. And this is critical. Most people, why I was asked this question the other day in an interview, was like, well, Jamie, why do you think most people don't get what they want? You know, and they're talking about the law of attraction. I said, look, the law of attraction is very important if it's backed up with the law of action. But I said, why most people don't get what they want is most people are focused on what they're afraid of. Most people focus on what they're fearful of. They focus on losing. They focus on the things they don't want. They focus on the bills. They focus on the lack of. They focus on what they don't have. So that's what they're going to manifest as more of that. You focus on something you don't want to happen, you're bringing it towards you. Okay? We all have the capacity as humans to manifest. That's just a God-given gift that we have. The challenge for most people in society is they're using it, but unconsciously, and are using it against themselves. Because they're using it to manifest the things they don't want. Why? Because that's what they're allowing themselves to focus on. To get the things you want in life, you have to train yourself to focus on the things that is that you want. You recognize the fear, but you don't dwell on it. The fear is there, like don't walk over the cliff. That's a warning sign. Change your approach. You put your focus back on what it is you want. And that's how you go about manifesting you want. So if you look at the study of people that have had more in their life, it's because they've consistently focused more on what it is that they want. People that have less of a focus on the things they don't want. The brain and the capacity is still manifesting. We're all capable of that, and we're manifesting all the time. The question is, what are you manifesting? That's the key. It's all the truth is in the what? The truth is in the result. So focus is critical to maintain your focus. Now, in a credit crisis, in a recession, or hits the fan, it's even more important then to stay focused, because most people start to panic when they become an investor. And you're going to say, wow, I recognize that fear. We're not going to be like robots and just turn off our emotions and be a robot. That's not effective. We are humans. As human beings, we are emotional beings. And we must recognize that. So a lot of people say, well, business and investing is logic. Yeah, it might be logical, but we're humans, we're emotional. So that's why we've got to understand our emotions, how that affects us. Because fear and greed are the two biggest emotions that are a danger to investors. Fear, they panic. And greed, they get greedy, and it drives them to do silly things. So if we're not in charge of our emotions, it's going to play havoc in our ability to stay focused and logical about our decisions. Making sense? So what we focus on will determine everything. So don't focus on the fear, focus on what it is that you want. Okay, number 3, jot this down. Number 3 is language patterns. Number 3 is language patterns. In other words, the language that you use. So if I say, this pisses me off. When I say that, okay, the word pisses me off has a certain vibration. Thank you. Doesn't it? For some of you, it's like almost like an earthquake. It's like you can feel the energy. The word pisses me off has a certain energy. If I say that has a certain energy too, doesn't it? Words and language has a certain vibration. If I say this pees me a little. Different vibration, isn't it? This pees me a little. It's hard even to want to get mad. It's like pees me a little. So by changing our language, we'll change the intensity of our emotion. Some words will intensify an emotion, other words will lower the emotion down. Making sense? So language patterns are critical. So what you say to others, okay, or what we say to ourselves, even, two forms of communication is what we're saying to others or what we're saying internally. So the language that we're using consistently to ourselves, that self-talk, is very critical. Is your self-talk empowering or disempowering? And it's a matter of changing that, and that's heavily related to your self-esteem. So if something goes wrong and you beat up on yourself too much with self-talk, then that's not serving you. You've got to say, okay, I make mistakes sometimes, I'm not perfect. However, let's change this. Let's not get beating up on yourself too much because it's not going to work. Sometimes you need to kick up the backside, okay? Sometimes you can give yourself that, but it's not about disempowering language because it's not going to serve you, and also to others. So language patterns will change the way that we feel just by the words we use. So some people get into might have an argument. When you look at an argument between two people, is a competition for energy. True? It's still trying to steal each other's energy. So arguments when someone can say something to trigger a negative anchor in someone else. Who's ever been in an argument and said some things you later regretted? Who's ever done that before? Come on, we've all been guilty of that. So we're going intelligent people do some dumb things in certain emotional states. True? Who's ever done some dumb things in their life? Okay. And if you look back, what caused you to do a dumb thing, it was probably because you were in an unresourceful state at the time that perhaps you later regret it. Maybe you were angry. There's a classic emotional state of doing something that you maybe later regret. Because in that moment of anger, you probably said something that you probably think, maybe I shouldn't have said that. True? Okay? So different emotions will determine our behavior. So if we want to change our results, we've got to look at is people are focused on, okay, we want a result, but to change our result, we've got to bring it back one step, okay? What determines our results is our consistent actions. True? Consistent actions over time will produce particular results. Well, what determines our actions? Well, to act, you first must make a decision to do something. True? You must decide to act, and certain actions over a period of time will lead to a certain result, okay? And what determines how you make a decision? I've covered some of this on the home study, but basically the way that we make decisions, we do make decisions for two reasons, predominantly. Psychology 101. We make a decision to avoid what? To avoid pain, or to gain what? To gain pleasure. Now, this is so critical around money, as well as around investing. Because what humans will do, and why most people are not financially successful, is that we will do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. We'll do more to avoid pain. You want to jot that down. We'll do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. So in a rich country, why most people are not as rich as they could be is because even though they could make some decisions and move towards the pleasure of making hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, the pleasure of that and that abundance, what they would create for their life, that equals pleasure. The pain is the fear of loss, fear of losing money. The fear of losing money is more painful. The fear of that will override the pleasure of making money. Does it make sense? Therefore, most people will avoid taking action that could lead them to the pleasure because of fear of loss. And that's why most people live a fraction of their financial potential, because we'll do more to avoid the pain of losing than we will the pleasure of winning. Repeat after me. Something to think about. And it's so critical when you understand that psychology. Okay, there's a fourth thing that determines how we feel at any given moment. So we looked at psychology, or physiology, the way that you hold your body, the way that you're sitting right now. So how you feel right now, whether you're feeling excited, exhausted, okay, worried, concerned, exhilarated, is all determined, one, your physiology, how you're sitting, by just changing your physiology, just by lifting your shoulders back a little bit like this. You'll feel slightly different. Smile on your face, we notice you'll feel dramatically different. What you're focusing on, Okay? Are you focusing on learning a valuable lesson that could transform your life? Or are you focusing on, I hope the nanny's looking after the kids properly, or I better do this tomorrow, I forgot to do that, oh my God, the bank shuts too late. Where's your focus? That determines how you feel. And language patterns, what you say to others or what you self-talk, what you're saying to yourself. This is all going on at any given time. The fourth thing, jot this down. This is critical. Jot it down, meaning. The meaning we attach to something. The meaning that we attach to something will determine how we feel. Let me give you a quick example. I have a friend, a great guy, that had a tragic thing happen to him when he was 9 years of age. He got run over by a train. He lost his legs, 9 years of age, and he, obviously, tragic accident, and he had, obviously, quadriplegic, had to live the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Now, most people agree that's a tragic thing to happen. True? However, what's determined whether that could happen to someone, and it's happened to people, and as a result of that, they attach a meaning to that my life is over, life sucks, there is no God, how could this ever happen? I didn't deserve this isn't fair. And they would commit suicide or live a life of depression or a life of anger and bitterness. True? And a lot of people go, well, that's probably understandable. It's a pretty tragic thing to happen to someone. But they've chosen a meaning that disempowers them, that causes them to feel that way. Where my friend chose a much smarter choice. He said, because he didn't necessarily control what happened, but he said, you know what? He chose a different meaning. He said, you know what? I'm so lucky. He said, I am one of the most luckiest kids alive. That's the meaning that he attached after it happened. I could have been killed. I may have lost my legs, but hey, at least I've got the rest of my body. So instead of looking at it in a negative light, he was so grateful and so positive. Hey, I'm still alive. It could have been worse. I still have a body. I'm still alive. I've still got a future if I choose. I might be missing my legs, but hey, I can still live a life. He chose a different meaning to attach to the circumstances. He said, I must be so lucky. I didn't die for a reason. I must have a meaning and purpose in my life. There's more I have to do. I survived through this. There must be a reason for that. Different meaning. Now, is that going to affect his life differently to someone who has the negative meaning? Yes or no? Yeah, absolutely. Now, same thing has happened, but what the result of that is determined by what meaning we attach. So emotional intelligence is this. Who's ever had this experience where something's bad happened to you in the past, but many years later you look back and go, actually, I'm glad that happened. Who's ever had that experience? We'll talk about that this morning. So I remember when I was 16 years of age and I fell in love for the very first time. This girl lived a couple of hours away. I grew up in the country and I was in love and then the bitch dumped me. Can you believe that? Can't believe it. She dumped me. And I was in blame, excuses, like my life was over. I was in love, I was happiest, and then the bitch dumped me and I was demotivated. I was always a motivated kid, but I was demotivated. I was depressed. I wasn't happy. How could she do this? Not fair. Life is over. All these empowering meanings I was attaching to what happened. Does that make sense? No wonder I felt bad. No. So I'd attached a lot of negative meanings, okay? So as a result of that, I felt bad. It wasn't until some time after that, it took me a while to get over and eventually got over it, carrying all this baggage around, then look back at that circumstance and go, you know what? I'm so glad that happened. I got to meet someone else and my life went in a different direction. It wouldn't have happened otherwise. And really, turned out to be a good thing. Who's following what I'm saying here? Okay. Now, emotional intelligence is this. Why do we wait a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years into the future before we decide to look back with a different perspective, a different set of eyes on the circumstance that we considered tragic or we didn't want to happen or unfortunate before we look at it in a more empowering light? Why do we wait? Emotional intelligence is in that moment, not waiting a month, a year, 5, 10 years to look at it in a different light, is in that moment something happens that we didn't want to happen. To be able to look at it and go and attach a meaning that's going to serve us and is going to empower us. Does it make sense? Because if we don't consciously choose a meaning that's going to serve and empower us, and we choose a meaning that's negative or disempowering, then there's going to be consequences of that. Is that true? And that's where the saying comes from. It's not what happens to you, but it's how you respond or react to what happens. And it's so true. Now, what I'm saying is it necessarily easy to do this, yes or no? Not necessarily easy, but it is possible and is simple. But is it critical, yes or no? Is it critical you train yourself and you ensure that you attach an empowering meaning? Now, that can be difficult at times. You can look at something that you didn't want to happen and say, well, what's great about this? Nothing. Life sucks. It's not fair. Blame, excuse, blah, blah, blah. It's quite possible. We've got to look at it and say, well, what's, and a good question, jot this down, a good question to ask, what is the gift in this? A very wise man once said, Jamie, the key to life is this. The key to life, if you can turn your worst day in life into your best day, then that's the key to living. If you can turn your worst day in your life into your best day, that's the key to living. In other words, what he was saying was, even if something tragic, challenging, difficult can happen, and you might think it's the worst day of your life, if you can take a meaning from that, look for the gift in that, and have that empower you, attach a meaning that empowers you and serves you, that can be the catalyst that transforms and has your life go in a whole new direction. Something to think about. And the more you study success and you go back through history of successful people, you will find there was a time in their life when there was something that they didn't want to happen, something that was challenged them, that was difficult for them, that they had that threshold, that crossroad, where they could have took a negative meaning from it, but they chose to attach a more empowering meaning. And that become their source of strength. That become the gift they saw. And out of that, that's become who they become as a person and sent them in a direction that's had them improve their life and live a great life. Does it make sense? So often the very things we don't want to happen to us are the very things that often need to happen to us in order for us to go through that life journey, to get that wisdom, that knowledge, and go in the direction that we need to go in. True? Even though we kick and scream and fight, we don't want it to happen. Imagine if life was like you were told before you were born, everything's going to happen to you. Would you f*** your life up then? You would, wouldn't you? Be trying to avoid everything. You don't want it to happen to you. It's thank God you don't know half the things are going to happen to you. True? It's good. You want some surprise. You don't want everything to happen. No, it's going to happen to you because you'd be like, well, I'm going to avoid that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to like, you'd be like a nervous wreck. You've got to have faith. Is that true in life? How would you get through this world without faith? Could you drive down a road 100 kilometers an hour with someone else coming 110 the other way with only a white line between you without faith? Even people that think they don't have faith, they have faith. You couldn't exist without faith. So life often has plans for us that we don't expect or don't know. And often it's the very thing you think is the worst thing that can happen to you can often be the gift and is the best thing, if we attach the right meaning. It can be something small, something big, but it's all about looking at it. So therefore, your past does not equal your future unless you allow it to. So if we say, okay, that makes sense. So moving forward, I'm going to be very careful, Jamie, to what meaning I attach to something, because I want to be empowered, not disempowered. I want to live the most out of my life. I don't want to be, upset or angry or missing out on the joy of life over something that goes wrong. Because there'll be things that go wrong. Is that true? There'll be things that happen outside your control. People do things to you you won't appreciate or you don't like or you don't think is right. If it hasn't happened to you yet, guess what? It will. You have something to look forward to. Okay? But it's going to be your psychology, how you deal with that, remember. Okay? A global credit crisis, is that a good or bad thing? It really depends, isn't it? It depends what meaning you wish to attach to it. True? Depends what meaning you wish to attach to it. I looked at some of the great things. What's some great things about the credit crisis? Well, I thought it was great how interest rates come rushing down. Was that good? That was fantastic. Okay, there were some benefits in that. Was it good that maybe most people and even companies or individuals looked at all their expenses and go, you know what? I could probably do with less, and I'm going to cut out some wastage. Was that a good thing? Some of you went through that exercise. You would have cut out some of your wastage and realized, you know what? I'm wasting a lot of money. I'm taking things for granted. I don't need to waste this stuff. I can be happier on less. Is that a good thing? The world maybe then realize, oh my God, that all this uncertainty, maybe they should focus on things that are most important to them, which is spending time with their family. The simple things in life that don't necessarily even have to cost a lot of money. They can just get back to basics, back to how people live in a third world, actually. And that's why they're happier, because they don't have all these choices. So they have to be happy with what they've got. When we have too many choices, sometimes we lose gratitude. We just want more and more and more, okay? It's okay to have great things in your life. I love having nice cars and nice boats and living in nice homes, but I'm not attached to that. It's a bonus, it's a gift, it's a way to share and joy with other people and friends. Does it make sense? But if we get attached to that, then we lose our identity, we lose our sense of fulfillment. Making sense? So you could look at a credit crisis and say, and look, attach me into what's great about all these things. There's probably great opportunities that can come out of it, great lessons. How do we change and adapt? So whatever happens to us, is it good or bad, is really your choice, isn't it? Because often, sometimes, the good things we think are good actually end up being bad for us. Bill Gates, I think, was the one that said that it's in our, when we're celebrating, when things go well, we tend to celebrate and party. You don't learn a lot from your successes. He said, in life, you learn more from your failures. Because when you fail, you sit down and ponder and think, what happened? I'm not going to do that again. True? But when we're successful, success, we don't get as many lessons because we're too busy partying. Okay? So, what meaning we attach is critical. So here's what I have. You want to jot this down? This is a little tool to throw in your toolbox and take with you, and you can use this one every day. I have what's called a 2-minute rule. You might have heard me talk about this in the home study. Is that true? 2-minute rule. So in other words, it's just a way to keep myself in state. I don't always abide by it. I break my rules sometimes, but it just holds me to a higher standard. So if something upsets and pisses me off in life, and like kick the cat, I get really upset, and look, I know there's some animal lovers in the room. I don't really kick the cat. I used to, but I don't have one anymore. That's Rocky. I'd never kick Rocky. Rocky's my #1 business partner. So I'm actually an animal lover. I'd never really kick the cat, okay? So the point is that you might be really upset about something that's enraged you or upsets you, but I have a simple rule that I've got a 2-minute rule. 2-minute rule is this: I've got 2 minutes to get this out of my system because I have to change my state. In other words, I have to manage. I'm not going to let something negative wreck my day or my week or my month or my year. Because some people, they kick themselves on a little pebble and they bitch and moan about it and they wreck the